Meeting of the Plan Commission. The notices were mailed and posted on 1/22 of 20. Continue with the roll call. I am Mayor Kim Smith, and I am here. Alderman Tom Smith.
I'm here.
Jared Holter. Here. Jan Brock is absent excused. Jenny Akins.
Here.
Newt Temte. Absent excused. Craig.
Present.
And our new Park and Rec Chair, Andrea.
Present.
Welcome.
Again.
Item 2, approval of minutes from the previous meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Tom to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. One abstention. Item 3, public input. Please limit your input to 3 minutes and state your name and address when you get up to the podium, and we do have a sign-in sheet. Would anybody like to address the committee? Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Marcia Horvath, and I live at 1205 County Road, PH. I know tonight is about the whole city, but I would like to talk about the proposed rezoning at the south end of County Road, PH. I think I speak for the entire neighborhood when I say that we appreciate that the city has worked long and hard on the proposed rezoning and updating the zoning codes, and that they are working to do what's in the city's best interest. And we are very grateful that you have listened to our neighborhood residents and agreed to keep the zoning for the 12 homes at the south end of County Road, PH as single-family residential. Also, I was pleased to see that the 2020 proposed zoning map posted on the city's website shows that the zoning designation for the 12 homes has been changed from MU and back to R1 residential. Furthermore, I see the proposed zoning for olive juice quilts has been changed from MUC to MUN. The mixed-use neighborhood is the closest thing to the current transitional commercial, which will cease to exist. I do, however, have questions about 2 things which I would like answered tonight. First, the proposed designation for the Braunston complex is mixed-use community, which is not residential friendly. Since the 12 homes will be staying R1 residential, it seems that, like olive juice quilts, the proposed zoning for the Braunston complex should be changed from its current transitional commercial to mixed-use neighborhood. The complex is right next to residential properties, and the MUN designation would be a better fit in the neighborhood. It would correspond to the proposed mixed-use neighborhood zoning for the Center 90 complex on Sand Lake Road and the 1400 to 1600 blocks on the north side of Main Street that are in comparable settings. Secondly, I am wondering why Stonefield Manor Senior Apartments is changing from R4 high-density residential to mixed-use community, which is focused on commercial use, not residential. Why would this not remain high-density residential since it's a residential complex? Can you please address and answer the questions about the proposed zoning for the Braunston complex and Stonefield Manor? Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the committee? Second chance for anyone who'd like to address the committee? Welcome.
I'm Julie McGarry, and I live at 1220 County Road, PH. On behalf of my husband, Dick, and our many neighbors on the South Lake of PH and throughout the Mayfair area, we'd like to thank you once again for recognizing the value of keeping the 12 homes on the South Lake of PH zoned R1, and for recognizing that in the future, it's important to maintain this zoning. Like Marcia, we have a concern regarding the zoning of the Braunston property to mixed-use community, and from transitional commercial conditional use permit. And the conditional use permit was nice because it offered us some protection for changes that could possibly occur in the future in that area. And they would have to go before the zoning, the plan commission, and the city council to make any changes. As we understand it, with mixed-use commercial, they don't have to do that. They can go in and put anything in that's listed on the list. And you've all seen that list. We've had many discussions about what's on that list. And of course, we're also concerned about Stonefield Senior Living Center. That is an R4, high density. And I don't even see the rationale for changing that. And again, if you could help explain that. The owners of these properties at any time in the future can deviate from their original zoning uses. And I would like to know how we would address this in the future if something comes in that we as a neighborhood feel would be undesirable. You know, can you let us know what recourse we have? So again, I thank you for your service to the city and for supporting us in our pursuit to stay residential.
Please sign. And thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the committee? Second call for anyone who would like to address the committee? Third and final call, asking if anyone would like to address the committee. Thank you for your input. That portion of the meeting is now closed, and we will move on to consideration and possible action on the following items. Item 4 is a public hearing. It is taking place approximately 7 p.m. or immediately following the public input to adopt the Unified Development Code and zoning map. The most updated versions are available online. And so this is the opening of the public hearing, and I'd like to ask for people from the public who would like to speak in favor of the Unified Development Code and zoning map. Katie?
I have an email on behalf of Dr. Leo Bronston who requested I read this tonight. I am unable to attend the Plan Commission this evening, thus the intent of my correspondence is to voice my support for the properties located at 1200 and 1204 County Road PH proposal to be MUC. Kind regards, Dr. Leo Bronston.
Thank you. Katie, did you have any information you wanted to share in advance of the public hearing?
I can, if you'd like.
Sure. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So this is the public hearing for the Unified Development Code and the zoning map, a project that the city and Plan Commission have been working on for over 18 months. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to read the code and have come prepared with questions if there are any that staff are available to assist you with. Our code was previously very bulky. It had a number of different sections. A great amount of time was spent reorganizing our code into its new setup today. There are 6 sections. The first is the introductory provisions where we go over the authority for the city based on state statute to have the ability to zone. And then we also go into our official map and other administrative procedures. The second chapter is primarily the bulk of the ordinance as it's devoted to zoning districts. It lists out the general divisions. It lists out all of the base districts, some of which were brought up this evening. Then we go into the design overlay districts. So we took all of our planned unit development, downtown planned unit developments, our planned commercial industrial districts that you've seen over the course of the years. Used to no longer be in the code. It is now back in the code. We also focus on natural and historic resource protection overlay districts. So we have over here an overlay map that shows all of those areas, focusing on our blufflands. We have some historic We don't actually have any historic districts, but we have the ability to create one in the future should we want to pursue that. It also lists out our floodplain, shoreland, things that fall into those general categories. Further, we continue on with district-specific standards. There are some districts like the mixed-use neighborhood, mixed-use commercial, our R3 and R4 districts, have particular architectural controls that did not exist today. And that is the intent for the city to have more control over how these buildings and structures are developed to make sure that they're context sensitive. So for example, if we would have a threeplex go into a neighborhood, there's a way to design those structures so that it's compatible with single family or twin-doors and it's not as noticeable versus a stark, no architecture, creativity, fourplex or fiveplex. So we've really tried to embrace neighborhood context-sensitive development into this, and that's where you would find those standards. Moving on, we also have use-specific standards. Previously, we didn't have the best way of laying out how this code would work. So we tried to be very specific and organized and call out rules that we would have for daycares, rules that we would have for hospitals, rules that we have for drive-throughs, and it's all listed in those different sections. So when people go and look at the code, there's only one section that they need to go and find. This is the final draft version. Our consultants, HKGI, will be giving us, at the end when we have no more changes, a clickable document. So you can click from one section and you say, oh, I want to go and look at the performance standards, and you click on that, it'll take you right to the performance standards. So the overall intent is to be as easy for the public to use in addition to staff. Continuing on, we lumped all the general development standards together. So noise, odors, those are types of performance standards. We beefed those up. We also lumped all of our parking and circulation standards in one location. Many of our parking standards had not been updated since 1969, which kind of hurts in terms of how obviously we as a society have changed in how we travel. We have more vehicles. We wanted to make sure we were being sensitive to those different types of developments and that we were categorizing different types of uses based on how they were being used. So example, hotels, we now regulate them by how many units they have, how many, what am I forgetting? Rooms. Thank you. So like, why can I think of it? Dwelling is not right. How many rooms, which seems very obvious. Previously, we did it on how many employees that hotel had. Wow. Doesn't really correlate. So we spent a lot of time going through all of those parking standards. We also have all of our landscaping standards. We are now requiring more beefed up with landscape architects to any development over 1 acre. So we want to see more intensive, higher quality landscaping moving forward. And it definitely gives staff a little more opportunity to negotiate with them and make sure that we're getting the best overall design at the end of the day. And that if people's plants and trees die, that we have recourse to make people go back and replant. They can't just let it die and let it sit there and then overall degrade the whole point of why we had them installed in the first place. We also have a new section devoted to screening and buffering, and then further tree protection and restoration. For our larger trees, our higher quality trees, heritage trees is another name for them. We want to make sure that they're being protected, and on sites more than 1 acre, we have very specific standards if you have to remove those trees, how you have to replace them, and on what for what basis. And then further, we go into defining the different, they have to be diverse. You can't have more than, for example, 30% of any one type of tree, because we have a lot of folks that really love maple trees, and there are maple bugs, just like there was the emerald ash borer that came in and wipes out trees. So we're really promoting tree diversity, and this time we're focusing it more so on private property than public property in our boulevards. We went through heavily and our subdivision standards, so we have our basic requirements for preliminary plats, final plats, certified survey maps, many of which items that come before the Plan Commission. Also, required improvements and land dedications in terms of park fees is addressed in this section. And then Chapter 5 is all of our administrative and procedures, all the different applications that the planning department will see, many of which come to the Plan Commission and Common Council. We have a lot of tables that make it easy for people to say, I want to do a site plan, I want to do a certified survey map, and they go to this table, it gives them, is there a public hearing? How long is it going to take? Who makes the final decision? What do I get at the end of the day? So that people are able to have those questions answered immediately in a very clean and concise way. And our very last chapter is all the definitions. There are some categories of definitions focused on adult use. Our airplane overlay district, for example, our floodplain, because they're so specific to those types of uses, they're categorized together. Otherwise, it's just one really long laundry list of all the definitions that we've included in our code. So this is just a brief summary of the overall UDC. And after the public hearing, I'm happy to answer any questions, in addition to Amanda and Zach and Jared, as we've all worked a lot and on this particular project this evening. So thank you for your consideration of this new code.
So Kitty, at the end of all that, are you expecting this group to make a motion on it tonight, or is it still continuing to evolve?
This is the final draft.
Okay.
So we are looking for a recommendation of a sort to the Common Council
Okay.
and the Plan Commission this evening.
Thank you. So we'll go back to the public hearing then. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the Unified Development Code and zoning map, please do so now. Second call for anyone wishing to speak in favor of the Unified Development Code and zoning map. Yes, ma'am? Please come to the microphone and state your name and address.
Marcia Horvath, 1205 County Road, PH. Will you be answering our questions about those two?
If you have questions, you can ask them, but that's not the format. Like, the format is that you speak, and then when you're done speaking, we'll have our discussion and make our decision.
Okay, it was just about the Bronston complex, that the mixed-use neighborhood would be comparable to what's in Center 90 and Main Street, that the same kind of thing, and I think it would be a better fit for the neighborhood. But especially Stonefield Manor doesn't seem like it should be mixed-use community when it's a high-density residential as is. But-
Okay.
Okay, so you will
Thank you.
be talking about those later.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Jacob Wallace, 1214 County Road, PH. I'm actually the senior pastor of River of Life Assembly of God Church, right behind Caribou Coffee and the Bronson Chiropractic. We actually sold them that property. I just want to speak in favor of this resolution. So.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, would anyone else like to speak in favor? Final call, would anyone else like to speak in favor of the Unified Development Code and zoning map? Okay, that portion of the hearing is closed, and I will now listen to people, we will listen to people who would like to speak against the Unified Development Code and the zoning map. Is there anyone who would like to speak against?
1220 County Road, PH. I just have a question. When this goes through, can a developer come into an area such as our residential R1, or let's say the church property that pastor is representing, and request that it be rezoned to something else? So that in the future, we still could be coming before you at the request of a developer. Is that correct?
The format of this is, it's a hearing, so you may speak against, it's not a conversation. So your concern is noted.
I'm just, The only thing I'm against is the Bronston property going to community, mixed-use community rather than mixed-use neighborhood, and for the Stonefield going to mixed-use community rather than R4.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to speak against the Unified Development Code and zoning map? This will be the final call. If anyone would like to speak against the Unified Development Code and zoning map? Not seeing anyone, I will declare the public hearing closed and open the discussion to the committee. If someone would like to make a motion, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the Unified Development Code and zoning map as presented by staff.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Craig Breitsprecher and a second by Tom Smith to adopt the Unified Development Code and zoning map as presented. Is there discussion? Andrea?
I guess I'd like to hear the answers to their questions before we vote on this.
So to address the most recent question for future, per se, if a developer were to want to rezone property in the future, anyone can apply for a rezoning. There would be, just like this evening and any other time, a public notice sent out. The applicant would need to get the property owner's signature on that application, essentially noting that they agree with this, and they would propose it to be rezoned. And all properties within 250 feet would be notified of that in advance. So anything that it is being rezoned to today or tomorrow will stay as is, but we don't know in the future what development will occur. And it's entirely possible that developers in the future could choose to go on a property by property to rezone in the future. That's definitely a possibility. Ultimately, it's up to the Plan Commission and Common Council to say yay or nay, but there's no stopping someone from asking.
And Katie, if I can ask, part of that process includes a public hearing, just as we've done in the past with any rezoning, where public input is taken and that's taken into consideration.
Yes. The other questions related to the zoning for the Bronston property and also Stonefield Manor. Stonefield Manor was proposed to be in the MUC district. This was when we originally had the 12 properties that have been discussed this evening go to the MUN. And then this essentially continued on that. This property is also directly adjacent to MUC land. We did send notification to all of these property owners with our intended zoning change from what they are today, and they all had opportunities to come in and talk to the city if they had questions or concerns or any issues with those zonings. We, to my knowledge, did not hear from Stonefield Manor. Amanda? Do you remember?
I can't be certain. I did speak to a couple of different apartment and or senior living complexes, and I don't have my notes in front of me, so I don't know if I specifically spoke to them or not.
I do know for a fact that we did talk to Dr. Bronston. He did get our letters, and he called, and we had a conversation with him about it. And you also heard his feedback through his email tonight that he would like to retain the MUC as proposed by city staff. So.
And why was the Stonefield changed from R4?
We changed it to R4 because our R4 senior facility is outright permitted in the MUC district. So we didn't keep it as R4 because everything leading up to it, became mixed use. So it was the intent that it was a mixed use district. So that's why it was changed, and we brought it to the MUC because apartments and senior living are outright permitted in that district. So we basically allowed it to keep what it is today with the focus on mixed use. Amanda can add to that as well.
A lot of the senior living type apartment complexes are also offering nowadays additional services above and beyond simply offering apartments, which really puts them in a more of a mixed-use category. They're offering fitness classes, they're offering different socialization, and so they've kind of expanded beyond just your average apartment.
Thank you, Amanda. Craig?
Just as a personal observation, I think all of us, including myself at times, look for guarantees 30 years down the road. There's just no such thing. As much as I was in favor, too, of holding off on the rezoning of the PH properties, I also believe that with developers, where applicable, I'm not interested in overly burdening them with restrictions either. So I think it's being fair to everybody, and I'm in favor of exactly what's being proposed. I think the staff has done an excellent job. It's very well organized. It's user-friendly, and we've come an awful long way from where we were a year and a half ago. And staff, outstanding work.
Thank you, sir. Eric?
There was a brief question also as to why not conditional uses versus outright permitting. And that would be due to Act 67, which places restrictions on planning commissions now from imposing conditions, and our way around that is to designate what is permitted in various districts to avoid that inability later on to really restrict our ability to do conditional uses.
Thank you. Katie?
So to add on to what Eric had stated, it also had the feel that you were allowed to have a lot of public input, like Ms. McGarry had noted. They would receive public hearing notices every time there would be a conditional use permit application, so they would know when something would be up for discussion. With Act 67, it was very, very difficult for the city to ever deny a conditional use permit. So even though there may have been reasons given by the public to deny a conditional use permit, we actually can't. So that public input is almost for naught, other than specifically notifying them what may be coming, but the ability to add conditions is no longer there. We're very restricted in what we can do. So that's why, in addition to the permitted category with permitted uses, we also created permitted with standards. So now very specific uses, many of which used to be conditional uses, are now permitted with standards, and we took what conditions we would historically add to those uses, and now we mandate them if they should ever want to do one of those. So in the end, the city is better protected, and we're treating all these new uses the same in the future.
Thank you, Katie. Craig?
When Act 67 first came down, I think I can almost speak for the Plan Commission. I don't think there was anybody that was excited to see that, simply because the state saw fit to wrest a great amount of control away from communities and cities to govern developments, and really put the burden on you to show why it shouldn't be that way. And I think this route, permitting uses with conditions, I think is the right way to go, and it takes back some of that control again.
Thank you. Andrea?
But the mixed-use neighborhood would be more restrictive than the mixed-use commercial and more protective for the neighborhood if that were the zoning that were applied, for instance, to Braunston, wouldn't it?
There are fewer commercial uses that you can do in mixed-use neighborhood as opposed to mixed-use commercial. With that particular property, it was transitional commercial, but there were many uses that were considered conditional. So there's a concern of downzoning, which we can't do because of the loss in the ability of uses that they would have had in that original district.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I forgot about that.
Thank you. Tom?
I just like to say, I've been through this from the very beginning of the process. It's been a long process, and I think I agree with Craig that I think we're doing a good direction, the best we can. The state has kind of put our arms around some of it to ourselves, so I think this is a way that's fair and distribution of stuff. I also like the public input. We've had a lot of people have been here several times, but I think it's real important from a planning commission that we did hear out. We hear out the PH folks. We heard the people on Mason Street. We had several areas that had concerns, and then we were able to work with them to make it a win-win for everybody. Not everybody wins everything, but at least I think we're in a better position going forward. So congratulations. I think the planning committee and your folks have done a great job. So I'll support it.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Not seeing any hands. The motion on the floor is to approve the Unified Development Code and zoning map and adopt it as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
Abstain?
Motion is unanimous with one abstention. Item 5, review and consideration of a request to extend the final plat submittal requirement for 1 year as requested by Kevin Fry on behalf of the Elmwood Partners, 1857 Sand Lake Road, Onalaska, for the 4th addition to the Country Club Estates plat, tax parcel number 18-3566-100 and 18-4479-0. Katie.
Thank you. Before you this evening is a request to consider a 1-year extension to February 11th of 2021, allowing the addition of the Country Club's estates to be submitted later than the 36-month filing requirement after the approval of the preliminary plat. We approved the preliminary plat back in 2012, and we have had since annual extension requests since 2015. The applicant is unable to be here this evening due to a medical issue, so they're hoping that you would consider this. I did speak with him, and it is their intention to file a new general development plan and follow it up with a final implementation plan as part of a planned unit development. One of the reasons of slowing the process from last year is that we were under this process and writing a new ordinance, and they wanted to see how it would apply to their particular parcels. So they are again requesting a 1-year extension if the Plan Commission and Common Council should so approve.
Thank you. What is the pleasure of the committee?
I'll make a motion that we extend the submittal request for 1 more year, especially knowing that hopefully this will be the last time that we'll finally get it resolved, not from year to year. But as stated in number 5.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion on the floor by Tom Smith, seconded by Andrea Benko, to approve the 1-year extension for the property as stated. Is there discussion? Craig?
I'm not a believer in giving another 1-year extension. I think we've been down this road on so many things over the years, and I understand that we're rewriting our zoning code, but I'm not buying that that's the reason why this has been put on hold. I think economic conditions, especially considering the fact that it is zoned residential, how much better does the economy have to get for the ability to sell homes or anything residential? I'm not seeing this. I would almost rather have them, if they're going to start putting together new plans, file again, bring those plans to us, not under this extension, but under a new application.
Thank you, Craig. Jared?
Part of what, when I look at this area, it's been a long-standing development within the city. The first Country Club plat actually came into the city in 1995 on Country Club Lane. They followed kind of a marketing strategy going around the golf course there. Had a lot of successful plats going down Country Club Lane and around and kind of moving their way around the golf course. And they got that plat, I don't have exactly which ones are memorized now, but the one they're trying to sell lots in right now kind of came to a stagnant time. I think the developer in 2018 actually sold a few lots in that subdivision and thought things were coming around, and then in 2019 they didn't sell any lots again. So I think they are hopeful they can sell lots in that area, but I think they're just trying to wait out and see what happens with the market. I do agree with Craig. When is enough? When is the market going to change? And I think part of the development in the Country Club in general, from a Plan Commission standpoint, is that was a lot different market 25 years ago when those lots first went on the market. So it probably is going to need some sort of revitalization, different look to keep that area viable so we get more development in that area for the city and hopefully can open it up to some residential development of some kind. So, but
And I like the idea of being able to develop that. That's all well and good. But in my heart, I don't believe that there's a firm plan today and a direction, either on their part or anything that's been communicated usefully to the city, that tells us that there's something forthcoming in the not-too-distant future. I would rather that they just submit a new plan under a new application, knowing that they're going to move forward with it.
Thank you. Andrea?
I guess I'm along those same lines. It's been, I think, a year and a half since I was last on the commission, and for the years prior, every year we renewed this, and I don't understand why. What purpose does just renewing this at this point serve? Why would they want to do that instead of just dropping this and then resubmitting everything when they finally have a plan? It must cost the city to renew this every year.
No, there's no cost to the city to renew it. We're essentially just still letting it ride, where they don't want to give us the final plat and then put in all the improvements if they're not ready to sell the land.
Right. So there's no staff time that goes into this every year, reanalyzing anything? Okay.
But
Tom?
I thought that some of it, we were encouraging them to wait because of all the rezoning changes and stuff to see where this would all ended up with them. Wasn't that was one of my impressions from an earlier discussion.
Last year, they had requested, as Jared had stated, they had sold some lots the year prior, and they had anticipated it occurring in 2019, and it did not. So that's why they came back this particular year.
I'm not sure that staff, to my knowledge, in all the years I've been on here, has ever encouraged somebody to wait or move forward with some type of development. I don't see that as the city's role. That is the province of the developer themselves to make that determination when it's appropriate to move forward. Clearly, they have not seen that that's the case. I say get this off the books. Let them come forward when they have a firm plan in place that they want ready to move on.
Thank you.
So what's the ramifications if we don't do this? That's important, right?
Sure. So if you choose to not extend it, and they don't put the improvements in, then the plat goes away, essentially dies. They could still come in at a later date to do a planned unit development, which you've seen before, where they come in with a general development plan and a final implementation plan, and they could run the preliminary plat process in tandem, or they could do that after the fact. So it essentially would require them to resubmit to the state, to resubmit to the city, pay new fees, staff review, and things of that nature.
It doesn't take any rights away from them. You know, they lose nothing. But I just don't see this. They're living off of a previous application that clearly the intentions just aren't there right now. And there's no promise in the foreseeable future that there is something.
Okay, Amanda, did you want to make a comment?
No, I was going to ask.
It was answered. Okay, and then Eric, did you want to make a comment?
Similar situation occurred with the French Valley, what is the?
French Valley
French Valley, I got it right, okay. Where there was, again, multiple requests for the one-year extensions. And I believe the Plan Commission gave notice that they would do one, but that would be the last one unless they developed it in.
Last year, they did the final one for them.
And they didn't get it in, so they did not apply after that. So that may be another alternative, is to go on record saying, potentially do one, but that this is the last one unless the plat comes in.
My question, though, Eric, is that binding?
No, the Plan Commission can change, and you can take different options next time around.
Yeah, that's my
Statement of
that's my concern.
Okay, Craig, did you have any more?
I think I've talked too much.
Okay, if the discussion is finished, then we have a motion on the floor to extend for 1 year the final plat submittal as requested by the Elmwood Partners. It will be all in favor of the 1 year extension. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, so did we have 4-1? Okay, 4-1, motion carries. It's a pass. Item 6, review and consideration of a proposed site plan amendment for 1785 East Main Street, Onalaska, Wisconsin, tax parcel ID number 18-725-1. Katie, do you have something you want to say about this?
Sure. So before you this evening is a consideration of a proposed site plan amendment. It was approved for a conditional use permit in 2005 by the Plan Commission to install a telecommunication facility at 1735 East Main Street. Common Council then gave it final approval in December of 2005. Attached are the original conditions of approval and also the conditions of approval tied to the site plan. We also included background information in the attached letter. We do have an updated easement agreement that did not make it into this packet, but would move forward to the Common Council for consideration. The site plan amendment essentially is removing the condition that they are to maintain the road that goes up to that property as that road is on city land.
Thank you, Katie.
Wait, okay, can you clarify that, Katie? Because that, so you're saying that the only thing that's changed is the original permit minus the restriction to maintain the road?
The site plan, yep. So that's all that we're proposing to change is just the no longer having to maintain it. And in addition to this, we are working with them on an easement agreement to allow them to have access through city property to that site.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the committee?
I'd make a motion to approve the request for the site plan amendment.
Thank you, Craig. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jared, to approve the site plan amendment for the property as stated. Under discussion. Craig?
This, to me, I think seems to be the only way around a kind of a messy situation that's kind of piled up over the years. It was kind of it was hard to follow, but this may be heading in the right direction, so.
Jared?
So this is cleaning up the access to the cell phone tower site through the city property, and it actually follows the existing road that goes to our reservoir site up the hill. And I think that was the original path that was supposed to be taken. This property wasn't owned by the city when the cell phone tower originally went in, so, you know, might be a little different if we didn't already have the existing road there and already have a use for it where we're going up the hill. But in that regard, I agree with Craig. It's kind of cleaning up an old item that there's a new owner of the cell phone site and they realize, oh my, this isn't there. So that's the reasoning behind it.
Thank you. Andrea?
I want to, how do I add a condition? I want to add a condition that this easement right evaporates when the tower is gone, so that the easement doesn't go with that tiny little parcel forever. Yes.
Amanda?
We're working on that. We just don't have the updated version of the easement agreement for tonight. So that's Sean O'Flaherty's office is actually handling the drafting of the easement, and they just didn't get it to us to get it to you tonight. But there will be language that the easement terminates in the event that the property is no longer used for telecommunication purposes.
So just to clarify, what Andrea is asking will be addressed in the easement agreement.
Yeah, that will go to council.
So for clarification, the easement agreement will not pass through this committee, but make its way directly to the council. Okay.
You have most of it. I mean, we're just adding essentially one line to it on the termination. Otherwise, it's substantially will be in the same form that you have in this packet.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then the motion on the floor then is to approve the proposed site plan amendment for the property at 1785 East Main. All those in favor, please say, oh, go ahead.
The amendment that comes from, we're not approving this one, we're approving the one that's going to come from their office, correct? How do we do that? Because I don't want to approve this one, I want to approve the one once you have the language terminating this easement, right?
You're not approving the easement tonight, they're correct? I mean, on here is review and consideration of the site plan amendment.
My understanding, that's a separate document.
Yes.
Okay.
And if I may, the council would have the purview over easement on city land, not the plan commission. So it would just be the site plan that you'd be
And
reviewing.
at the last month, Plan Commission meeting, the Plan Commission essentially approved the easement pending review and sign off of the legal department.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so I will restate that the motion on the floor is concerning the site plan amendment for 1785 East Main Street. Okay. Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And then item 7 is update on amendments to the Title 14 sign ordinance. Katie?
Thank you. So we just wanted to let the Plan Commission know, as we would whenever we update the sign ordinance, that you are made aware of it, as it used to be in the zoning ordinance and it is no longer. So a lot of it ties back to what we're doing this evening. It clarifies the new zoning districts. It also incorporated sections of the Unified Development Code that still pertain to signage that needed to be removed, and they've now found their way into the appropriate chapter. So digital billboards, all of the rules that we worked really hard on, they are now in that new section. And as ordinances are living documents and we use them every day and issue sign permits, we find little quirks. And then what we intend to be in there, we always want to make a little change here or there. So for example, canopies, we no longer are going to limit the number of canopy signs that one can have. Instead of having, for instance, 2 with your logo of your business and then 3 blank ones, we want people to be able to advertise throughout. It's an awning, otherwise it just doesn't look as appropriate. All other signs, you are limited to 2 signs of any type based on the number of frontage that you have. So this is one small change that we acknowledged. And then we also, especially in our mixed-use neighborhoods, we no longer count the sign base as part of the overall square footage of the sign. Otherwise, you can be severely limited in how much square footage you can have, and we want people to be able to use that type of signage instead of over-signing with temporary signage. We would rather have people invest in permanent signage. We are also making some tweaks to our temporary signage. We've had folks that have hilltopper signs up all year long, and how does that translate into our zoning ordinance? And it's really hard to write for that, as we cannot be content-based. So we are tweaking the language that all residential properties are allowed 1 sign per frontage all year long, and they can do with it what they want, provided it is less than 3 square feet, which is the size of a hilltopper sign. Also for Holman, if they should want to do in the Holman School District. Or it can be whatever they choose to be, provided it is less than 3 square feet. 3 square feet.
Or the
Take your signs
Badgers.
down. So we're allowed to do that. So we're trying to be respectful of how people use their properties, and we don't want to be overly burdensome. So this is a perfect example of people that use the code and they ask good questions, and we want to make this a living, breathing document. So now we're going to be able to make a change inside of a month instead of 3 months, which is one more reason why we removed it from the zoning ordinance. So just to keep you informed of that.
Thank you, Katie. Does the committee have any questions or comments about that? All right, thank you for the update.
Not, I would move for adjournment.
All right, motion by Craig. Is there a second? Second by Andrea. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. The time is 7:50.
You know, the first meeting that I missed was the first meeting where you took up this zoning cord